Danny Cantwell, title attorney, KVS Title. Thanks for joining me, man.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, Danny, before we dive into the nitty gritty of title law, let's start with your journey. You've had a pretty interesting path to real estate, going from an ACC tennis champion. How about that? To title attorney. How did that transition happen?
Well, it's kind of a long story. I'll keep it 100 words or less, maybe. I grew up playing tennis, went to Maryland, where I believe my friend Shane Hall, who I'm looking at right now, is where he went.
You got it.
He played lacrosse. I played tennis. And after college, after graduating, I went on and played some pro tennis for about 5 years. 1997, got injured. And I thought I was going to be going to play the Australian Open, but the knee injury was a little bit more involved. And instead of going to Australian Open, I thought it would be a better idea to go take the LSAT course. So that's what I did. And then I went and took the LSATs and started law school. And next thing I know, I'm finishing law school, taking the bar, passing the bar, and I was a law clerk for about a year. Did a lot of mediation law for the judges, because the dockets in the district court and the circuit court are jammed in the morning and afternoon. And the judges, it was sort of a new program. This is 25 years ago now, where they had law clerks sort of do some mediation. I would go in the judge's chamber. I probably did maybe 50 mediations, and maybe 40 out of 50 I was able to settle. And these are people that have sued each other, and they're sitting across the table, and I'm trying to bring something together there. And it was quite interesting. It was a great experience. And so I had a bunch of friends, talked to them and said, where do you think I should take this law thing? I'd been hired to be a litigator.
Yeah.
And I realized that I probably shouldn't do that if I wanted to stay married and get to know my kids, because I have to win. And I decided to go into the title attorney world, and it's been great. I mean, it's fairly awesome lifestyle for an attorney, because I have lots of friends who does other types of law, and they spend a lot of time, 7 days a week, even on vacations, 14 hours a day working. And they don't get to spend the time, go to their kids' activities, spend time with their significant others. So it's a great decision.
Nice. So over your career, you've done, in my research, over 8,000 closings, probably more than that. And you covered what drew you into the title law. What's kept you in it?
Yeah, I'd probably say it's probably closer to double that, but I don't know who wrote that bio, how long ago it was. But yeah, it's what's kept me in it. For the most part, I have Saturdays and Sundays pretty much off most of the time, most of the year. So it's great to be able to spend time with family. But I like people. So I'm one of the attorneys, actually, I'm not a droid or a robot, and I like people and to deal with them and work with them and help them, and have been able to earn a living and pay my bills, and it's been great. That's what's kept me going.
Good. You've been at KVS for a while, and it's a firm that's known for a high level of service. What do you think separates KVS apart from other title companies?
Well, I've worked for several title companies. I've been part owner of one. With KVS, I am not part owner. But with KVS, how KVS was started back in 2010, it's now 2025. So 15 years ago, if I'm doing my math right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I came in, just under 2 years of company. So I've been there 13 years now. And the concept was to hire the best of the best. And KVS at all levels hires the best of the best that they can possibly get. And it's word of mouth. For example, the managing partner, when he would hire a processor, he may talk to 30 different people, agents, lenders, colleagues, learn everything they can about who's really good, who they would want to work with. And so we've hired the best of the best. That's one thing that separates KVS, I believe, from other entities. Another thing would be we have 5 full-time attorneys, and they have 2 support staff paralegals, so 7 people. All they do is review title. So we get the title report from the courthouse. They review it. They review LLC, limited liability company documents, operating agreements, revocable trust agreements, bylaws for corporate documents, you name it, they review it and they give it the blessing. Whereas in other title companies, a lot of times in a smaller title company, you'll have a processor, a post closer, an attorney maybe, and like one person, maybe the processor's reviewing the title. Maybe the attorney looks at it a little bit and, says, okay, it looks good. And the processor, if anything needs to be done with it, which a lot of titles do to clean it up behind the scenes, the processor actually does that. Whereas KVS, we have 5 attorneys and 2 support staff who totally do it behind the scenes, so that the processors, a very high level processor, is able to talk to real estate agents, lenders, other attorneys, and they're not clearing title every single day. And also another thing that sets KVS aside, when a processor and or post closer and or attorney leaves for vacation for a day, couple hours, a week, there's a floater, that's what we call them, that steps in that person's shoes and does their job. So when they come back to the office, they don't have 250 emails with, people like, where are you? Why didn't you get back to me? What's going on here?
Yeah.
It's seamless. And that's for a quality of life, work quality, working at KVS. That's amazing because you can actually vacation or take time off to go to the play at school and not worry about work. Someone else steps in and it's covered for you.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. Now we got a little bit of your background. We'll probably tap into some more stuff later on, but I want to break down some of the magic behind the title process and why it's one of the most crucial, but also misunderstood aspects of a real estate deal. I think a lot of buyers and even some agents, the title process feels like a behind the scenes thing that just happens until there's a problem. And would love it if you could break down exactly what title attorneys do on a deal.
Sure. Each deal is unique. The old adage, you don't know what you don't know, is very front. It's there in a real estate transaction. That's why, people want to work with you, Shane, because you've been doing this a long time. You have a lot of experience. You know how to, negotiate and handle things. But like me, I don't know everything. I learn something new all the time, but I've retained a lot of it. And so it just comes with experience. But basically, once you ratify a contract, we, the title company, get that contract. So we take the baton almost like in a race. I've got the baton now. It's my job to take it from there and get it to the finish line. So once we get the contract done the same day, we open the file and we're looking for various things that might affect the transaction 2 or 3 weeks down the line or a month, whenever it settles. But we're ordering a title report. So we have people in each county and jurisdiction, whether it's DC, Maryland, Virginia, that their job is to search everything in the title, including the judgment runs and stuff like that would affect the title. So we'll get a title report back 2-3 business days after we open the file. And the title report, the first page is a summary of everything, but then you sort of get down into all the nitty gritty. There's copies of the deeds and easements and any mortgages and any liens that might be affecting the problem. Sometimes the title report is as small as 15 to 20 pages. Sometimes it's 300 pages. It depends on sometimes a person's name, like let's say Jane Smith or John Smith. You're going to have a lot of extra title work there because there's going to be judgments against, someone that has a common name. But we are ruling all that out behind the scenes. At the same time, we're coordinating with the lender, if there is one, for the buyer. And we're preparing what's called a title commitment to the lender, basically saying, based on the title report, we're going to ensure this transaction, we're good to go. And that's what a lender wants to see. Leading up to settlement, we're working with the buyer or buyers, seller or sellers, listing agent, buyer agent, assuming there's each in the deal, and coordinating everything with them. And we end up at the settlement table. And at KVS, there's only attorneys that do settlements. We don't have settlement officers. Again, you don't know what you don't know. And also at the settlement, sometimes some legal stuff can pop up. The party or parties will look at the attorney and say, what does that mean in the contract? What can we do? If you're not an attorney, you can't answer that unless you're going to do the unauthorized practice of law. So the attorney handles the closing and then hands the baton off to the post closer, the person or persons who take the file from me, and they get everything presented to the courthouse for recording, get all the documents back to the lender if there is a lender, prepare all the title policies for the transaction that are final, all the copies to buyers and sellers as applicable. And that's kind of and then sometimes we have some issues, and I know we might talk about this a little bit later, but sometimes some issues with title that our title underwriter, we're an agent for the title underwriter. They'll allow us to close, sort of kick the can down the road, if you will. They call it insuring over, but we take it a step further at KVS. We, even after it closes, we clean that up to make sure that that particular property doesn't have that issue when they go to sell in the future. So it's and I've simplified the process, but there's anywhere from 5 to 15 people working on the file. So there's a lot of eyes, a lot of hands, and everyone that I've worked with has been doing this for a very long time, and they're very good. They're some of the best of the best.
Yeah.
So it's that means something. There are easier files. There are harder files. You never know. Each property is unique, and I would like to think everyone is honest, but everyone isn't honest. I've come to learn that over time. And so we try to sift through everything and make it as seamless and easy as possible for buyer, seller, agents, everyone involved.
Nice. Well, title insurance is one of those things that people pay for, but they don't always understand what it is. I know we get clients that ask, well, should I do, it says here title insurance standard
Optional.
and premium. It says it's optional. What is this? Can you explain why it's essential, what it is and why it's essential?
Sure. I think the biggest question I get about title insurance is, or biggest comment, and most recent, I was talking to this person from New York, and they do things differently in New York. It's attorney state, meaning the attorneys draft the contracts on every deal. Whereas here we have a couple standard contracts, the MR, residential contract to sale, and the GCAR in the Maryland, DC, Virginia area, but they draft them up there. And this person was like, you've done a title report. You've looked at everything. Why am I paying more? I shouldn't have to pay this. You should. And I said, I completely understand what you're saying. And we've done everything. We've researched it, done the title report. We've looked at everything, several eyes on it. But again, we don't know. We don't know. That seller could have taken out a loan a week ago and it's not showing up yet. Or there could be, a couple of mortgages on there on the property. And, you don't want to get involved with that. Unreleased trust is another big thing. But the biggest thing is there could be some breaks in chain in the title that we didn't know about. And I'll give you a quick example. Almost all of our settlements, the sellers and buyers sign at separate times. And I had sellers come in. I was expecting 2 people. Well, 3 people came in. This is probably about a year and a half ago now, 2 years. And I said, could I grab Jane Doe and John Doe's driver's license? And Susie Doe says, well, what about mine? I'm like, well, it's only the 2 of them on title, so I don't need yours. So I go and make copies. I come back in and they say, we're kind of confused because about 3 years ago, we did a deed and I'm on the deed too. See, here it is. And they pulled out the original deed that they had signed. And Susie Doe was, sure enough, a seller. So we had to take a step back. And had they not said anything, we close and someone brought up hey, the estate of Susie Doe says, hey, where's that money for that? It's just, it's the unknown. And it's a one-time charge, title insurance, which I don't think a lot of people understand, like car insurance, health insurance, a lot of other insurances, they occur, every month, 2 times a year, whatever the case may be. Title insurance is one time, and it's to protect you if anything comes up. Is the big, I mean, there's a lot of things that it protects you from.
It's a good thing to have. I mean, I don't think I've ever had a deal without it, but it does pop up, especially with our buyers that are maybe not so keen on spending money.
Well, exactly. I mean, all this money is going out the door. You're like, the heck? My loan officer said, I don't need this, or my real estate agent, or my parents say I don't need this, or I read on the internet, which everything's true on the internet, that I don't need this. I don't take it off. I don't need it. And we do occasionally, I would say, of, I don't know, 4,000 settlements in a year, there's maybe 50 people who say I don't want to do it, something like that. So it's a pretty low percentage, but it's usually a person's, like, one of their biggest things they buy in their entire life.
Right.
And if something were to go wrong, you want a big insurance company behind you to be in your court, so to speak, to handle anything that pops up.
In your experience, what are the most common title issues that could cause major roadblocks in a deal?
Probably the biggest is what's called an unreleased trust. I know you've probably heard of this many times. What is an unreleased trust? It's when a loan is paid off, which is half the battle, but it's not released from the courthouse. So, and this used to be a bigger problem 20, 25 years ago. It's better now, because there's a couple of companies out there that in Maryland, DC, the bank has about 90 days to file the lien release for the mortgage. And if they don't, there's these companies that, or it's a line item charge on the seller side, it's like $35, that they go after the bank. When I say go after, not in a mean way, but like, hey, you forgot to file the lien release. I mean, they're all over them until that gets done. So it's going to be less and less over time. But imagine getting a call, Shane. You think you've got one mortgage on your property. You did a refinance. This is all hypothetical, a couple of years ago, and you refinanced with, you paid off ABC Bank. Now you've got XYZ Bank. You get a call from Danny at KVS Title. Hey, Shane, yeah, I need the payoff information for ABC Bank. You got two loans here. And you're like, whoa, 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 whoa. That one was paid off. What are you talking about? I'm like, well, it's still showing up as record. We deal with that a lot. That's probably 60, 70% of the time we're dealing with loans that aren't paid. Sometimes people get a home equity. They don't realize it's a recorded lien on the property. They've never used it. It's just been collecting dust for 10 years in their closet. And, that's a mortgage that we need to get the payoff information from, even if it's a zero balance, but we got to go through all that and get all that. And other big things that we see are a break-in chain, or with LLCs, stand for limited liability company, or corporations, or trust. We've got, they thought they had all the right people signing, but they didn't, or they did the deed on their own and recorded it. Family members that it's been in the family forever, and they sometimes do deeds back and forth, and they miss one sometimes. And there's those types of things happen more than people think. And we work very hard behind the scenes to clear that up so that it's seamless to a buyer and seller. But those are things that we're doing behind the scene that make the transaction hopefully easier. Because when you get a call from a title company, which we did about 8 months ago, I guess, this title company, I should have said it's from the agent, because the title company said, hey, we can't close this. We can't see the deed, get a copy of the deed. When the deed was indexed, the image was not showing up. Everything's like computerized and online. The image wasn't showing up, and it had a wrong legal description too on the deed. We're like, we can work with this, and we can do this. We can handle this. We reached out to the recorder of deeds, and we got the image. They actually had the image. We got that within a few hours. And then the prior deed that conveyed into the current owner's deed, we got that person, we got the legal description corrected. I wouldn't say hunt it down, but we found the sole member of that LLC and had that person sign a confirmatory deed, or a corrective deed, if you will, which corrected everything. We closed like in 4 days. But those types of things happen quite frequently. And there's some title companies, again, you don't know what you don't know. They may close not even doing that thorough of an evaluation. I mean, we're very conservative. We do a very, very close look at title. So
That's nice.
Yeah.
Story time.
Mm-hmm.
Can you share a story of a deal that was on the brink of falling apart because of a title issue, and how you and your team saved it?
Yeah, let's see.
What's today?
Yeah.
Tuesday.
My gosh. I've thought about this. I'm trying to think of the best one to tell you. We had one where the sellers and the buyers entered into a contract, and I'm forgetting how many years ago this was now, but the sellers were under contract to buy another place. They'd found like their dream home. And during the course of time over the next couple of weeks, the deal, the house that they wanted to buy fell through. So the sellers didn't want to sell anymore.
Right.
So I had almost a hostile witness, if you will. And man, that was a 4:00 closing. Actually, I'm remembering this is probably in 2013, I think it was, maybe 14. So it's a while ago, but they were supposed to come in at 4:00 and sign. And I had a lengthy conversation with them about the contract and, if they chose to not move forward, the buyers had an equitable interest and could pursue specific performance and, all the legal jargon. Yeah. So we have a time at 4:00. They agreed to finally come in, and they showed up at 5:45. And it was a husband and a wife, and the husband was throwing papers at me and he was tossing the pen at me. And I'm like, hey, I'm just,
you signed the contract.
Exactly. And I had another one, and this one, 2004, 2005, maybe. I did a first-time homebuyer class, and a bunch of people in the class. And this one person, I don't know, a few weeks later, he hired the agent, and the agent, they did the contract, and they put us as settlement escrow agent. And so they come in, unbeknownst to us, and this is, again, what is this, 21 years ago now, I guess? Almost every transaction required a termite report. There were some exceptions. Nowadays, it's a little different, but back then, you had to have a clean termite report. So unbeknownst to us, there had been major termite damage. It was in a townhome, and it was not on the end unit, so it was in between two other units. And evidently, there was $25,000 of damage that the termites caused. They basically ate away the entire basement.
Wow.
And I'm like, how did this not how did it not cave in? And evidently, these townhomes were built instead of 16 inches on center.
Yeah.
They were like 8 inches on center with their not rafters. Help me with this. It doesn't matter. It's the joist, yes, holding up the place. And so they had to have all this done. So they're coming in again. This is a Friday at 4:00, and the buyer loses their rate that day. Of course. And first-time home buyer, the buyer from the workshop, and the sellers were told by their agent that, you don't have to worry about this. It's as is. And, but that's not how it was back then. And the contract's gone through many iterations since then. But I had to separate them. It was about a 5-hour closing. I got out of there maybe 9-10 o'clock at night, but I was working with the loan officer trying to get things cleared because they had done almost all the work. Yeah. They had rebuilt the basement, basically.
Oh, wow.
There's just a couple of finishing touches, but the loan officer had already gone to happy hour. So I was sending faxes back and forth to the bar where this loan officer was, and we finally got approval to move forward on it. But the sellers were not happy with their agent, so I had them in separate rooms. I was going back and forth. I brought my mediation skills into play that day.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah, but that was another one. I also had a closing, and this is more of a post-closing story, but I had little old granny and little old pop-pop. They came in 86 years old. I'll never forget this. This is, God, probably a few years before that, 2002 maybe, I don't know. And it was back when we had paper files. So, legal manila folders. And whenever I had more than 2 mortgages, I would literally open up the file and have them look at it and sometimes initial off on it, even though we had it in writing from their lender. But this particular transaction, grandma and grandpa, who were showing me pictures of the grandkids at settlement and seemed like the sweetest people I'd ever met, had 3 mortgages. And the third mortgage was what we call a bridge loan to get them onto the next house. They walked away, and this is a Potomac, Maryland house. They walked away with a couple $100,000 check. They wanted a check. And turns out there was a 4th mortgage with a $125,000 balance. So they should have walked away with $75,000. How did I find out about this? The buyer, again, really nice guy, buys it by himself. I think it was like a $500,000 or $600,000 house. Buys it by himself. About a month after settlement, he calls me and says, "Hey, Danny, it's John Doe. How you doing?" I'm like, "Hey, how you doing? Everything's going okay?" He's like, "Well, I just got this really nasty letter from an attorney saying they're going to foreclose on the property." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Back then, there was a tremendous volume of refinances and mortgages going on, and they were not recording releases. The courthouse was 6 months behind almost in Montgomery County at that point. So you think that you're coming to settlement and that title report is good the day of settlement. I mean, right now it's 2 to 6 weeks behind. So there's stuff that can be recorded in the gap you don't even know about. Anyway, that was one of them. It was recorded in the 6 months, but they knew about it. And then, so we had to reach out to them, and boy, they were not nice grandma and grandpa anymore. They knew exactly what they were doing. And that became a title claim, obviously. And, it all got resolved and the buyer was protected with title insurance. But that was a crazy one.
What's the most contentious closing you've had?
It was a husband and wife on each side, sellers, buyers, me, both agents. When you mix money and emotions, and other personalities, buyers, sellers, sometimes things can get a little touchy. I call myself a referee kind of jokingly sometimes when I'm in settlement, but I was a referee that day, and like in a boxing rink, because these guys, they stood up at the settlement table and they had their hands up on the table, and they were literally probably 4 inches, their faces. I mean, it was almost blows. And I literally had to separate them. I put them in different rooms. I'm like, we don't need that. And I don't even remember what they were fighting over at this point. It doesn't matter. But
those curtains are ugly. Do you know how much money I paid for those curtains?
Curtains, paint. I mean, the stuff that happens, like one of the big things that happens is chandeliers. People will take their chandelier and replace it with a generic one that they buy at Lowe's, Home Depot, some hardware store. And the buyer's like, "That's the whole reason I bought this house." Or I had one time, the medicine cabinets. "Oh, we got those from France. We had to take those. We put boy, that was a huge fight. So it's, you got to be very clear what you're taking and not taking. I had one time where the person took the Japanese maple tree, the red ones, not that big, out of the front yard near the front of the house. And buyers like, "No, you bring that back. We fell in love with this house. One reason because of that." I mean, you just can't make this up.
Damn.
Yeah. You can't make it up.
Unreal.
Yeah.
All right. Let's shift gears to something that's going to be shaping the future of real estate. Let's talk technology and digital transactions. We've seen some industries get transformed by tech, and, I know that it's made its way into the title world. How is it changing the title process, and what do you think the next big shift is that's coming?
Well, during COVID, let me back up. We had sellers maybe 5 years prior to COVID that would sign prior to closing, because we work with a lot of agents who are very busy, and they know how we operate, and we're organized. We've got everything together. They can come in 15, 30 minutes. Their sellers are signed out the door, right?
Yep.
So we were doing that in person. But once COVID hit, we invested, like some other companies did. Not everyone does this even today, into Ron, the online notarization platform, whereby as of now in 2025, probably 95% of our sellers sign wherever they are. For example, we have a closing coming up, and I believe it's an agent in this office that they said, "Hey, our sellers are going to be in Florida during closing. What are we going to do?" I said, "That's not a problem. They can sign from there, or they can sign the week before they leave, and whatever you want to do, as long as they have a computer that's not from 1975,
right?
And the capability to do that. It's easy. We do an online platform, notarize them, no big deal." So that's almost all of our sellers are signing that way. I think we all believe that once the banks, the lenders become more used to it, more relaxed, not relaxed, used to it, the industry is going to shift where buyers and sellers will be able to sign anywhere. I mean, certainly they can still come in and we can go to them and et cetera. But if you can sign at your desktop or on your phone or iPad, whatever it is, and your own convenience, I mean, it's going to be huge. Right now, Maryland, DC, and Virginia, we can do an online signing with a deed, and they record it. The governor said at the time you have to, and it's become standard practice now. But like loan documents, like a note and a deed of trust, that the lenders still want those wet signed.
Yeah.
Some lenders have what we call hybrid closing, so they have half the package that is signed. They send the buyers a secure email and they sign it that way, and then a very small part of the package they have to come in and sign wet signatures. In our industry, in your industry too, or in the real estate side, there's a lot of fraud out there because there's a lot of money flowing around, and people, unscrupulous people, trying to get their hands on that money. And so it's, it's secure what we do, and so hopefully down the road, the banks will get used to it, and it'll become the standard of practice as long as it's on a secure platform. But also like with AI, like let's say we're looking into our crystal ball into the future, a real estate agent wants to do an addendum.
Yeah.
Well, they type in or they speak in, they're like, hey, I need to do an addendum extending settlement to next Friday with Jane and John Doe, can you help me with the language? And it spits out some stuff.
Heretofore with we shall be.
Yeah, but the issue, I mean, that's great. It's awesome. But is it pulling from, Maryland law, or is it also pulling from state of Washington, Texas, and then did you give it all the facts? It's very fact specific, and you got to really think through it. So, real estate agents, attorneys are going to have hands-on and shepherd everyone through that process still, even with AI. But it's great, and who knows what else AI will do for us. I don't know.
I think it'll do a lot of stuff. I also, I think at the end of the day, people still matter, relationships matter, and AI is not going to be able to predict everything. But you're very right. You have to be very fact-based with it. Otherwise, it's just going to spit out whatever it thinks you want to hear.
Well, it's like
very good at that.
It's like in law, like if you don't include all the facts, then it may shift on one little thing, the whole opinion.
Right.
There's been some opinions lately with the Supreme Court and some other federal courts where, they decide the case, not even on necessarily the merits, but on like a different, issue. Like you don't have standing, for example, or, something like that. If you don't include everything in the AI, which you're telling, it's not going to spit it out. Right. I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Maryland and DC and Virginia, all close together, the DMV. Every one of them has different laws when it comes to real estate transactions. I'm sure it's difficult to try and keep up with that. But what are some of the jurisdictional differences that agents and buyers should be aware of?
Well, let's talk about Maryland first, and then DC is one place. So there's a DC jurisdictional addendum, and there's the property disclosure addendum. But in Maryland, each county has its own little way of doing business. Some counties have 2 transfer recordation type taxes. Some have 3. Some have a certain disclosure or addendum you have to include within the contract. Other counties don't have that. So Maryland is somewhat of a tricky place to do business. If you don't know how to do business out in Garrett County, you may not want to be doing business there because you might be in, real estate jail. So we're in DC, like Maryland. Let's take the Maryland disclosure disclaimer statement. In Maryland, and there's some exceptions to that, but in Maryland, you either disclose or you disclaim. Disclose is like 3 pages. They ask you about the plumbing, the electricity, all these questions. Disclaim says, no, I'm selling it as is, but for latent defects. You got to still, discuss latent defects, tell your actual knowledge of.
What's a latent defect?
Something that a person could not be required to see for careful visual inspection, and it would affect pretty much everyone, all invitees, purchaser. But for example, they take drywall and cover up black mold.
Yeah.
The seller knows about that. That's a latent defect. They can't say, I sold it as is. No, it doesn't work. DC, you disclose. You don't have I'm not doing that. You have to disclose about the property. Again, there's some exceptions to that, but yeah, there's so many. We could do a 3-hour class on that probably if I went line item by line item. But it's those are the disclosure, disclaimer, and disclosures are a little different from DC to Maryland. You don't have a choice in DC and Maryland. You can disclaim, and one thing in contracts that's interesting when you say, like, if you said, Danny, I'm going to sell my house to you, but it's going to be as is. So in my mind, I'm thinking, oh, as is when you bought it 10 years ago. That's nice. I like that. Okay, thanks, Shane. But in your mind, you're thinking as is the day we walk into settlement, right?
Right.
So and there's another little difference in the contracts that are used in DC versus Maryland. In DC, it says, I'm selling this property as is, as of, and there's a few choices: date of contract, date of home inspection, or other. So it twists with your mind there. If you put date of contract, acceptance or ratification, you don't really know what condition the property's in. You get into a he said, she said. Date of home inspection is probably the fairest. And in the beginning, when that came out many years ago now, some agents would put, a buyer agent would write in date of settlement. Well, if it's as is, as of the date of settlement, whatever condition it is on the date of settlement is what the seller is required to deliver the property in. So you do your final walkthrough the day before, night before, right? For a 9 a.m. the next day closing.
Yep.
And everything looks great. But after you leave, the seller has a big old party. I'm leaving. Woohoo. And it's like the Animal House movie. And next day they're like, what the heck? Whereas in the Maryland contract, it just says as is.
Yeah.
As is, as of when? I mean, what are we talking about here? I think we all know what as is means, but when you start getting into these attorney discussions,
I have found personally that the Maryland contracts are a little bit more ambiguous. And I don't know if that's intentional and, open to interpretation a little bit more, but they're a little more ambiguous than some of our DC and Northern Virginia contracts.
Yep.
But you mentioned something about teaching a class, and that kind of segues in nicely. So you've taught a ton of continuing education courses for realtors. What are some of the biggest trends and challenges that agents need to be preparing for right now in today's market?
I think they need to have a good grasp on the contract. They need to know how it works, and wherever their territory is, they need to know it cold, what they need to do, not do. Again, you don't know what you don't know. There should be a whole episode on that. And, if they don't know that, I just had this happen last week, and this law is fairly new, but October 1 of 2024, the law became effective in Maryland TOPA. And it applies to everywhere in Maryland, including Baltimore City, whereby if you list the property while a tenant is still in the property, then there's certain things that have to be done, and copies of, and uploaded to landlord-tenant, Office of Landlord and Tenant Affairs site. And we had one, come to think of it, another one too, on Friday. I think that contract is voided now because the seller didn't know about it and the listing agent did not know about it. And so they entered into the contract with the buyer and had not given the first right of refusal to the tenant. Tenant's probably going to say, no, I don't want it. And it's good, but they have up to 30 days to return the form without getting down in the weeds of it. They didn't follow the procedures. So that's one big thing they have to know about. FIRPTA, this is in the DC area. This becomes an issue sometimes. FIRPTA stands for Foreign Investment Real Property Tax Act. And it's when someone doesn't have the status, they're not a U.S. citizen, or they don't have the right status in the country. Money has to be withheld based on the gross proceeds, or the gross sales price, I should say.
Okay.
So if it's $1 million property, it's held 13.5%. That's $130,500, I think. I guess I'm a math whiz. That quick, that's pretty good, I think.
Pretty good.
Yeah, that's going to be a big shock to that seller. Another one is Maryland non-resident withholding. That becomes a big issue. And when we get a contract in the beginning of this podcast, we were talking about, what do you do? Well, on the day we receive a contract, that is one of the things that we look at when we open up a case. We look to see how they're registered with the Maryland State Department of Assessments Taxation, commonly known as SDAT. If they say principal residents no, then we have a team of attorneys, 4 of us, that get an email, Maryland non-residents at .com, and it comes to us, and one of us picks it up and analyzes it. And so, for example, Shane, we get Shane Hall on here, a contract from him, seller, and Shane Hall lives in the Annapolis area, Maryland, and the property's in Salisbury, Maryland. And it says principal residents, no. So we do our analysis. We talk to Shane. Turns out Shane is a Maryland resident. He's exempt from Maryland non-resident withholding. Or let's say Shane was in West Virginia, but Shane had lived there 2 of the last 5 years and it's registered yes with SSAT, exempt. So there's an analysis you have to go through, but that's another big thing that agents need to know about. And then, lots of solving issues, knowing about things. That's why it's important to work with someone that's, had a lot of, they've had a lot of experience with transactions and, dealing with things, because, there's a myriad of things come up. For example, I had one on this past Friday where the agent believed they were right, and they were, but they wanted me to take a look at it. They were entering into a listing and going to be selling a house with a revocable trust. Well, you have to, what do I call it? What's the name in the contract? Should I put the Jane Doe revocable trust dated, February 1, 2020, the amendments there too, or should I just put the Jane Doe revocable trust? So we iron that out. And how do they sign? Jane Doe, trustee. We go through all that. It's important to know that as an agent, what's the name and who needs a sign. So sometimes there might be 4 people that need to sign in a trust and you've only got 2. And we have other situations where maybe it's a married couple and one's away on a business trip and the person says, oh, hey, I have power of attorney. And the agent's like, okay, this is great. Let's get it all signed up. No, you've got to see that. I got to see if it's a valid power of attorney. I got to see if it was, signed correctly. The law changed 10 years, 10 years, maybe 15 years ago now, what needed to be in it, what kind of a power of attorney is. I mean, some people will go to Staples and grab a, power of attorney has nothing to do with real estate and have it signed. And
yeah.
And so there's just a lot of things that you need to be aware of.
Well, let's bring this all together with some practical takeaways for some buyers, sellers, and agents. For buyers, what are 3 things that they should do to ensure a smooth closing?
Be there on time. Let's see, I wrote down a couple here. Oh, that's so hopefully have an understanding of the entire process, of what to expect. And hopefully they have a real estate agent that has explained what to expect. Maybe they've been through it before. Maybe they haven't. Maybe it was in another state where they do things differently. Understand the process, be on time, because sometimes I'll have a settlement at 12, 1, 2, and 3. So if my 12 shows up at 12:30 or 12:40, that
messes up everybody else.
That puts a strain on the other settlements. Sometimes we can pivot and move another attorney in and stuff, but sometimes not. So it's important to, bring your ID and all that, follow the instructions basically. And also, with buyers wiring their money to the settlement company, we mentioned fraud before. We have a secure way of doing it. And to make sure they know that process, how they're going to get money. There's some title companies that will not take a cashier's check. There's some title companies, even if it's, a little difference, they won't take a personal check. Matter of fact, in DC, there's a rule. If it's more than 3,000, you're not allowed by law to take a personal check in a transaction.
Okay.
It's like Bill Gates or whoever the richest person is shows up to settlement and they need 3,500, and I'm sorry, Mr. Gates, I can't take that check. Don't know if it's going to be good or not. With sellers, this will seem odd to you, but probably the biggest thing with sellers is that they'll show up sometimes. I'm like, so, where can we send your money? I don't know.
Really?
Yeah. I'm like, you sold this thinking you're going to get some money, right? You want your money. That'd be the first thing I come in with. Here it is.
Exactly. Like, here's the bank account.
Yep.
Go ahead and put it
Bank
here.
name, routing, account number. What else do you need? And then other times sellers will want us to send to their brokerage account, which a lot of people don't know this, but it goes to a bank first and then for further credit to the ABC, manage money place or whatever, and the whole set of secondary instructions with that.
Okay.
And then sometimes people will want, hey, can you send my cousin this much money? And then, my friend over here, send him that much money. We try to limit it to just the transaction. Like, hey, why don't we send, you the money and you can send it? Because if something happened in those situations, it's coming back.
Then it gets weird.
It gets really weird. That's a nice word there. And for agents, make sure that their clients are meeting all the sensitive deadlines in the contract, know what their clients need to expect and when, and explain the process start to finish. Each lender title company may do things just a little bit differently. But the deadlines for certain things in the contract, time is of the essence in both of our main contracts that we use. So if you miss that, it could be a huge problem. And so you have to have a system in place. All agents should have systems in place for how they do things. And so they don't miss things. We certainly have a system in place for everything that we do, because we do a pretty large volume of settlements, and we have to, just like the Maryland non-resident, on day one, we get that contract. We're analyzing that. We're not saying the day before settlement, you're going to be subject to the Maryland non-resident. We need to collect 8% of your net proceeds.
Right.
So your net proceeds are $1 million. We need to collect $80,000 from you. Sorry. That's nothing. So if you have a system in place, you don't run into those issues.
Well, not to speak ill of my fellow agents, but how many agents do you think do a good job of having that communication, if you had to put a percentage on it? Because it's a tough thing. I know we all get kind of busy with things, and not every client is a joy, but it is our job to be communicative and relay all that critical information. How often do you think that's done successfully?
Well, I think every agent we work with is a joy. It's a tremendous joy.
Tremendous.
I would say, what's the saying in real estate? There's, out of the 100%, there's 10% that do 80% of the business, and 90% who do 20, whatever that saying is.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that we're lucky enough to work with a lot of really good agents, and we have really good people to know what to ask, what to do to help reel them in if they don't have systems in place. And, but if I had to give you a percentage, I'd say 20 to 30%, or
That's my guesstimation.
yeah. I mean, it's just like doctors, lawyers, accountants, real estate agents, any profession, bricklayer. My dad was a bricklayer. My mom was a homemaker. I mean, there's varying degrees of bricklayers. You hopefully have done your research and word of mouth and reputation, and however you analyze something to find the best person for you for the particular job. And not everyone does a good job. I mean, we have some agents that we have to chase down to get stuff from. It's very difficult. And we need them sometimes to give us their clients' phone number and email address, so we can actually talk to them or email them, get in contact with them to get information we desperately need to make the transaction seamless and happen.
Yeah.
So
do you feel like you should be sending the agent a bill afterwards for doing their job for them?
all agents we work with are awesome and beautiful. I just love them. I should go into politics, shouldn't I?
Yeah, you should, man. You should. So are there any, what are some red flags that buyers and sellers should be looking for in title commitments before closing?
The sellers, or are they the actual owners of the property? Like if I'm a buyer and I want to write an offer on the Jane Doe Revocable Trust, et al. Is what I see in the public records. Like, how do I know that I'm writing the right thing? Are those the right sellers? The buyers, if I'm a seller, does the buyer have the money to actually buy this house?
Yeah.
Um, the, those are the biggest red flags that I can off the top of my head think of, because that becomes a big issue sometimes. And there's some trickery out there right now in the market that we're currently in, whereby a buyer will say, I'm buying this in cash. And then the day after the contract is put together, ratified, meaning everyone's signed, it's been delivered properly, blah, blah, blah. They'll say, oh, I want to put a loan on the property. And depending on the type of loan, and there's a lot of things that can, open Pandora's box, so to speak, on that. So those two big red flags for each side.
We've noticed that a lot of buyers or buyer agents saying what they need to say to get a contract and then, figuring it out later. So that's more common than I'd like to admit. All right, we'll do some rapid fire fun before we wrap this up. Biggest lesson that you've learned in 10 plus years in title law?
That I don't know everything.
Yeah.
I've been 24 years now doing this, and I learned something new, or I relearn it. Like I've seen our contracts go through 10 iterations, at least, probably. So whenever, like Shane, for example, if you said, Danny, can you look at this contract or this addenda? I would typically, my reply would be, absolutely, Shane. Can you send me the contract and all the addenda associated with that? And I'll tell you why. There's still agents that use old addenda, old forms, write in their own things. So you have to analyze it and look at it a case by case basis. Each deal is unique type situation, but you always have something to learn. If you don't think you have anything to learn, I think, that's the biggest thing I've learned, especially in real estate law. It's always changing. There's new things that come and go, and you've, got to keep learning.
What's your favorite part of the job?
Helping people.
It's an easy one.
Yeah. I love helping people. I tend to help people that are nice. Now, if someone is angry and mean, I try to take a step back and say, I don't know what's going on in their life. Maybe they're just having a bad day, and I'm helping, but it's, and there's a lot of emotions when there's money involved, and a lot of stress when you're moving. And I don't know all the facts behind the scenes or why it's happening or whatever. So, but I do enjoy helping people and solving problems. It's almost like a math problem. Sometimes I'm like, yes, 2 + 2 really is 4.
If you were not in real estate, which career would you have pursued? Assuming that your knee.
Yeah. Next. Let me think about this for a sec. I still enjoy my tennis a lot. I still have my foot in the door, so to speak, in the tennis world, and still talk with a lot of the people. If I didn't do that, I'd probably, some way, shape, or form be in tennis, but with bad knees. That's a hard thing to be.
That's a hard thing
in.
to be.
So,
you'd be a tennis coach.
Andy Roddick has a podcast. It's called Served. But that's Andy Roddick. I mean, he won the U.S. Open and was top 5 or 10 in the world for a decade or more, and top American player. The last American player to win a Grand Slam in 2003, I think, so 22 years ago. Okay. So, he's able to just pivot and work out of his house. And I think he's in Charlotte, North Carolina. But
cool.
I can't necessarily do that.
I think you could. You got a great personality, man. You could pull it off.
Yeah, we'll see.
What's the one thing people would be surprised to learn about title work?
That is much more involved than they think it is. It is. There's a lot that goes into it, and just the smallest thing can cause the biggest problem. Imagine, taking a little tiny pebble, and you're at a lake, and it's just crystal clear, and you throw that pebble out there. It can cause a ripple effect just going out. And the same thing in the title world. If it's getting picky, but if you say like lot and square or lot and block, and you get the numbers transposed incorrectly, it could have an effect there. Missing one person. It's a very detailed job that you have to pay attention and have passion about, and have really good people. You don't want someone that is looking at their clock saying, is it is it 5 o'clock? Let me just, I don't want to do this. I don't, you have to care about your job. And I'm lucky that I work at a place where I can't think of a single person that doesn't put their heart into it. And you have to put your heart into it, whatever you're doing, really. You're not going to get be successful, but that's huge. Just the littlest thing could affect it.
You've closed so many deals over the years. What's your number one proudest professional moment?
Proudest professional moment. I don't know if this would fall under it, but I remember, I don't know how many years ago it's been now, but this person, I won't say, this person had saved money for like 40 years to buy a house, and no one in her family had ever bought a house before. And she was so excited and nervous, and it brought me back to, that's why this is one reason why I'm here doing this. Like, each transaction is important to someone. It was really, really, really important to her to own her own place and take charge of it. And that in that moment, I'm like, I was proud to be there and to help her with it. And I mean, she hugged me afterwards, and which is great. And, it felt really good, but it made me realize and think that, each time I come into a settlement or I'm helping someone, they don't do this all the time like I do. Right. I mean, they haven't done 16, 20,000 settlements. You can get somewhat, just glazed over, numb, jaded, whatever you want to call it, by doing so many deals. But you have to realize that each person, each time they do this, you don't know the whole background and what they're bringing into it. And, you're a counselor, a mediator, all this, but that was a moment it has stayed with me forever.
That's really cool, man.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Well, Danny, this has been awesome. Where can people find you and KVS Title if they need expert title services?
KVStitle.com. K for kangaroo, V for victory, and S for special. KVStitle.com, 301-605-1420. 605-20. That's the main number, and they can hunt me down.
Hell yeah, man. Go Terps. Way to go, man.
Terps.
Thank you. Appreciate it.